Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Jenny Dildine, the LDS Mission Coach, and you are listening to the LDS Mission Podcast, episode number 132, Work Worth Doing. I'm Jenny, the LDS Mission Coach, and whether you're preparing to serve a mission, currently serving, a returned missionary, or a missionary mama like me, I created this podcast just for you. Are you searching for epic confidence, ready to love yourself and to learn the how of doing hard things? Then let's go. I will help you step powerfully into your potential and never question your purpose again. It's time to embrace yourself, embrace your mission, embrace your life, and embrace what's next. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Here we are. Christmas is past, and we are on to the brink of 2024. Can you believe it? What is happening? Time's such a weird thing, right? It's sort of like, oh, time's going so fast, but then if you're in the middle of something challenging, like I'm sure many of you are, sometimes it just feels like it's really dragging on. I don't know how to make sense of time. It's an interesting thing. And actually, as I'm thinking about it out loud, probably the way we experience time is much based on our thoughts, don't you think? As many of the things that we talk about on here are. I wanted to just, before we dive into a little bit of what I wanted to talk about today, which has to do with sort of the new year and maybe setting goals for yourself and some of the chatter that you might be hearing in your brain and from other people, I wanted to just put a little request out there, or we could call it a request or a thank you ahead of time to go on and rate and review the podcast. I was just on there and I was like, oh, no one's really done that for a while, but I know that there are so many of you listening, and I appreciate it so much. The reason that it matters when people write a review or rate the podcast and follow the podcast is because it helps more people discover it. And so if you're listening, if you have recommended it to a friend or another missionary mom, if you are getting value out of what you hear here and you think maybe someone else could get value, would you just go on and leave me a review? I would love it so much. And I know the people that are listening to this podcast, I love you because you are interested in this work of helping missionaries. And that is one really simple way that you can do it, is just do a little rate and review on Apple Podcasts for me. And then more people will get more help. So thank you so much for those of you who have already left reviews and ratings. And sometimes I forget to mention it, but it does really help. So thank you. I also want to now just dive into heading into the new year. So we're headed into 2024. And as you are familiar, if you live on this planet, is that we start maybe setting goals for ourselves and thinking about, how am I going to change in the new year? How am I going to be different? How am I going to improve? How am I going to get to the gym more? How am I going to eat better? How am I going to be a better missionary? How am I going to, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And one of the sort of things that I've noticed about this time of year is that we'll start getting all kinds of quotes and stuff in our feed about working hard. And it's sort of this idea like you got to work really hard and you got to push yourself and you got to do the work to accomplish the goal that you're trying to accomplish. Now, this is true. You do have to work hard. But today I want to challenge us a little bit to think about the work, or the work that we're doing, or the work that is actually worth doing. I want us to challenge ourselves a little bit to think about that work differently. Okay, let me teach you a couple things about your brain. First of all, your brain loves patterns. It loves being able to delegate something that it is used to doing to the lower part of our brain. So our brains are, think of them like a computer. It's like an information machine, and it's taking in information all day long. And if our brains had to process every single bit of information that was coming into our brains, it would break down. It wouldn't be able to function. It's just too much. So what our brain tends to do and likes to do is it likes to figure out what stuff is relevant to me and what's going on for me, and what stuff is not relevant to what's going on for me. The other thing, and this is why, it's this confirmation bias that I've talked about on the podcast before, why I just got a new car and then suddenly everybody in the entire town has that same new car, but they were probably always there. Those cars were probably always driving around, but now my brain is like, oh, this is relevant. We should pay attention to this. So that's one thing that's good to know about your brain. The second thing to know about your brain, again, is that it loves patterns. So it would rather stick with a pattern that's actually painful than move to a new pattern. So maybe you have a pattern of overworking or being stressed or overwhelmed, or maybe like isolating yourself a little bit when you get overwhelmed. And so your brain, even though some of those things don't feel very good, your brain will want to go to them because it's familiar. And because once your brain knows that pattern, it can delegate it to the lower part of the brain. So our brain then with the information doesn't have to take in everything. It can be like, oh, I'm going to delegate that to the lower brain so I don't have to think about it, and that to the lower brain so I don't have to think about it. And it will just kind of run on autopilot. Let me give you a couple examples. So let's say that you have the same way that you drive to the mission office when you go, or the same way that you drive to the grocery store on your mission. Okay. Or maybe you have the same way that you drive to the school every day, the same place you park, the same place you go to class, or the same route that you take every single time. Now, notice that after you've done that for a while and it becomes a pattern, your brain doesn't have to think about it anymore. It doesn't have to go, oh yeah, which way do I turn? Oh yeah, where do I stop and where does it slow down and where's the intersection? We just can almost do it on default. In fact, that comes to mind that there's this street outside of my neighborhood that maybe I've mentioned before has our middle school on it, has the high school on it, and it also for a while was where our ward building was. We've now moved to a different ward building. But the number of times that I have driven up and down that street in the last 19 years that we've lived here I can't even count the number of times because it's so many. It's also one of the main roads that goes up to another thoroughfare that gets us up to the freeway. So I just almost don't even have to think about going up and down that road because my brain is delegated to the lower brain. But just recently, my daughter, actually, my teenage daughter, she came home from school and she was like, it was just so annoying. Floating Feather was closed. For construction or something, or who knows, they're putting power lines or whatever they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. But she was just like, it was just so hard and so much work to try to figure out now how to get home on a different route. The brain does not like changing patterns. It doesn't like it. Even if that pattern is not super useful. Even if we have a pattern of staying up all night and watching YouTube, or even if the pattern is like of skipping out on the gym or procrastinating homework or whatever it is, our brain would rather do that, keep the same pattern, than to change it up. Another example is brushing your teeth. Like when you brush your teeth, you don't have to be like, where do I put the toothpaste again? Does it go on this fuzzy part or does it go kind of down at the bottom on this stick part? And like how long, and do I use water? And what is this tube? Like you've been doing it your whole life, so your brain just delegates it to the lower brain. Again, our brain loves patterns, okay? So what I want to offer you today is that the work that we want to do to make change in our lives and to help us grow and transform ourselves is not necessarily the kind of work like we picture. It's not necessarily working hard and pushing yourself and hitting it at the gym, or starving yourself if you want to lose weight, or, I don't know, just like beating yourself up about not getting the number of baptisms that you wanted or whatever. The work is actually starting to unwind some of those patterns to see if we can become more sort of modest, shall we say, moderate in the way that we sort of approach people and the way that we approach ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to give you tons of examples, so stick with me, okay? So the idea is that if we have a well-worn pattern in our brain, that is where our brain is automatically just going to mostly go on default. If something gets hard, then our brain's like, oh, well, this is the way we should think about it, and this is the way that we should feel about it. The work is flipping it on its head, doing the opposite of what your pattern is, okay? Especially if that pattern seems to be not useful, and if it seems to be getting in the way of you being more of the person that you want to be. Now, let me give you a couple examples. So maybe you tend in one direction. Maybe you tend towards overworking, or maybe you tend towards not doing anything at all. Okay, we can see this on the mission, right? There's missionaries who tend towards, when they feel a lot of pressure, they tend towards overworking and like, let's just hit it really hard and push ourselves and go, go, go. And then we see missionaries who also, if things start to get full of pressure and things like that, they tend to shut down. I, for one, am a shutdowner. Is that a word? A shutdowner? I tend to, when I'm feeling overwhelmed and stressed, I tend to shut down rather than overcompensate. Okay? So just pay attention to which way you kind of fall. What is your default? What is your pattern? Okay? Another example might be, I tend to get overly stressed or just completely apathetic. Okay? Which of this wide spectrum do you tend towards? Maybe if there's a lot going on, you have a lot of goals you want to meet, you want to start going to the gym more, you want to get more baptisms, you want to meet your quotas at work or whatever it is, maybe you tend towards being stressed about that or about your homework or about your finals. And maybe you tend towards being completely apathetic, like forget this, none of this matters. Make sense? And this could be in your interaction with other people. I tend to be really stressed when things aren't going well socially or in my dating life or with my companion. Or we could tend to be like, forget that. I don't even care. I don't even need you. I don't care what you think about me. And completely apathetic, okay? Maybe you tend towards when there's a conflict with your companion or a conflict with your siblings or a conflict with your boss, maybe you tend towards isolating yourself and kind of being like, oh, I just got to get away from everybody. Or you tend towards just needing more social interaction with people. I need someone to talk to. I need someone to be with. I need to hang out with my friends. So here is the work. Is the work worth doing? Is coming somewhere in the middle of overworking yourself, running yourself ragged, and not doing it at all. So the reason it's important for you to know where you land on this spectrum is because if you tend towards overworking, then maybe your work is to move towards a place where you feel comfortable not overworking. Because what it might tell us, and I've recorded a couple podcasts about this, is sometimes we put our worth and our value into our working. So maybe your work, if that's you, is to move towards a place where you're like, I'm maybe not going to do that today, and still choose to feel good about yourself. But it could be, again, the direct opposite of that. You might tend towards not doing the work at all and shutting down and, going inward or retreating or whatever, instead of overworking. And so maybe your work would be the opposite. We would flip it on its head. We would say, okay, I noticed that my pattern is to tend to shut down. And so not doing anything at all. And so what I'm going to do, what my work is to move closer to the part where I can get up and still keep working, even though I feel like I want to shut down. And in this example of being stressed or apathetic, like stressed about your finals and about the job and about the goals and all of that, versus being apathetic, like I don't care about any of it, is if you tend towards being stressed, move yourselves more to the center where you're like, okay, this matters, but actually it doesn't matter that much. And I care about it, but there's part of it that just doesn't matter, and I'm going to be a little apathetic. But if you're on the apathetic side, maybe you move yourself more towards the stress side. Like if your brain just, its pattern is like, none of this matters. Maybe we need to encourage ourselves. The work is to be like, okay, how does this actually matter? Maybe it does. Maybe it matters a lot. Maybe it matters a little bit. And we bring ourselves into more of a balance in that way. If your tendency is when things get in a conflict with your friends or your companion, or if you're newly married, your spouse, or with a family member or your boss or something like that, if your tendency is to isolate yourself, your work is to retrain your brain to change that thought pattern to where you perhaps, when you feel like you want to shut down and isolate yourself, make yourself text someone, make yourself call someone and change it up. Or it could be the opposite. If you find yourself when there's conflict and you want to go gossip with your friends and tell all your friends and talk to all of them about what's going on with you, maybe you practice being okay with yourself. Do you see what I'm saying here? Is the work that we can do for growth and transformation is not something we can even see happening on the outside. We make judgments, right, about people like, oh, they're amazing. They're going to the gym. They're hitting their goals. They're doing all of the things that they should do. They excel at their calling, whatever it is, they're meeting their goals at work. And we make judgments about that they are the ones that are working hard. But I just want to offer to you that maybe your work is to not work hard and still be okay with you. Now, here's the other thing, is that we want to decide and understand that the work that you are doing on the inside is not going to be the same as the work that someone else is doing on the inside, okay? So maybe someone else's quote unquote work worth doing is for them to go to the gym every day. But someone else's work worth doing would be to choose intentionally not to go to the gym every day and instead love themselves right where they are and not go to the gym. So do you see how we're just coming into this place, to this middle ground where we accept, we love, we're compassionate with us, and move ourselves away from these opposite extremes where our brain just gets in a default pattern. Okay, so it might be true that you have a companion on the mission that's super motivated and wants to do more and be more and have more success and push you and never rest. That not necessarily is what I want to say is the work that they should be doing. It could be for you, if your tendency is to shut down, the work for you is like, okay, I probably should feel a little bit more motivated to get out there. That's your work. But maybe their work is to take a step back and learn how to be more compassionate with their companion who doesn't want to work. Does that make sense? So it's about untraining these patterns, these things that our brain have delegated to the lower brain. One person's work is going to be slowing down and learning how to rest, and one person's work in the same exact circumstance is going to be learning how to stand up and take a little bit more action. Now, neither person's way of work is right or wrong. So don't judge the way other people are doing their quote unquote work, and don't judge the way you're doing your work. A lot of the work that I've actually been doing over the last year is me unwiring this belief that I have to feel terrible and not like myself and push myself every single day if I'm going to be the kind of person that I want to be. And so it's taken a lot of work for me, mental work and emotional work, to just accept that that's not true. Like, I'm good and valuable and whole and wonderful and can have a successful business and can impact people's lives and create change in my family and inspiration and love and abundance, just not working and pushing so hard. But that was my work because my pattern was the other way. Okay. Let me give you a couple other examples. Oh, and let me just circle back and say it was tough for me to not judge myself, first of all, because I thought I should be a certain way and do it a certain way. And it was also sometimes hard for me to judge other people. Like, because now that I feel like I really understand and have come such a long way to this middle ground, sometimes I want to look at other people and they're like, oh, they're not doing it right. They're working too hard. But that's the point, is it's different for everybody. It's individual. And the number of ways that we need to quote unquote do the work is infinite, because all of us are infinitely different, that come from different backgrounds and different conditioning and different ways of thinking of things and different ways that we were raised and different motivations and different priorities and different values. So it's all good. There's no right or wrong way. Okay, let me give you a couple more examples. So maybe you have a tendency towards downplaying when you've achieved something, like not taking ownership of something. My daughter-in-law, she just graduated from nursing school. Yay, shout out to Lexi. Good job. We're so proud of her. But sometimes maybe if someone pays you a compliment, you have a tendency to be like, oh, it was nothing. I don't know. I don't deserve this sort of compliment. Or maybe you tend to put a lot of stock in people's compliments, and like maybe you tend towards being a little bit prideful or something like that. And again, it's so nuanced, because one person's work would be to learn how to be like really take a little bit more pride in what they have accomplished. And another person's work would be to be a little bit more humble about what they've accomplished. Okay. And it's just going to be different for everyone. And here's the thing. Nobody knows but you. Okay. Nobody knows but you. Okay. Let me give you a couple more examples. One person's work might be not judging people around them as harshly. So we always, say in the church, judge not, that ye be not judged, and all of that. And so that might be a lot of our work, is to not look at someone and judge them by their appearances or judge them by their accomplishments. But ironically and crazily enough, if we flip that on its head and take that sort of idea, judge not that ye be not judged, to an extreme level and push it all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum, there might be some people who aren't judging a righteous judgment even. So they're letting people abuse them or take advantage of them or let people walk all over them and haven't figured out how to judge righteously enough to stand up for themselves. So these are two things that are actually at opposite ends of the spectrum. And so where do you land? Do I need to lean more towards, man, I'm not going to judge those people at school so harshly. Like I want to work on that. I want to move more towards the middle of giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. Or are you on the opposite end of the spectrum where your work is to judge a little more righteously so that you aren't being in a people-pleasing mode or a perfectionist mode all of the time and getting walked all over, okay? Maybe your pattern of your brain is to avoid feeling sad. Like, I'm just so happy and we have to be happy all of the time, which is a good thing, right? But if it's just a pattern, maybe you need to learn how your work is to learn how to be okay with being sad sometimes. And maybe there's someone who's like really their pattern is always to go to sadness. That's what their brain just does on default. Maybe your work is to move a little bit more to the middle and be like, oh, well, is there a more positive way to think about this? Again, positivity all by itself is not the answer. What is the answer for you? Hard work and pushing yourself and really just like bending over backwards to work hard and push and never give up is not the answer in and of itself. Does that make sense? One person's work might be to not bend over backwards for people because that's what they do and that's where they get their worth and all of that. So their work might be like, nope, I'm not going to volunteer for that thing again. Okay, the song that came to my mind, the hymn that came to my mind was Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel. Okay, and I'm sure many of you guys know this one. It's hymn number 252. Put your shoulder to the wheel, push along, that one. And it says, we all have work, let no one shirk. And I just want to remind us that the work worth doing is not always work that we can see. We're not going to always be able to see someone putting their shoulder to the wheel. The work most worth doing is the work that changes us and transforms us and makes us more like our heavenly parents. So focus on your work. Stay in your lane with the work that you are supposed to be doing, because my work is different than my husband's work. Your work is different than your companion's work. And it's all good and valuable for our own growth and transformation. Now, I want to speak to this quote, whatever is worth doing at all is worth doing well. I disagree with this. I think that whatever is worth doing is worth doing it well or not well. And because some of this stuff is going to take a little bit of trial and error. Your brain, if it has that really well-worn pathway, it's going to take a little bit of practice and changing the way that we think about things and changing the way that we feel about ourselves and other people to transform that and to change that well-worn pathway. Just like when my daughter was trying to drive home from the school, that wasn't easy to do. And maybe she took the 10-minute detour instead of the 5-minute detour. Does that mean it wasn't worth doing? No. It's always going to be messy, you guys. It's going to be messy to try to figure out how to be a human that's full of love, abundance, peace, and compassion. Growth, transformation is always the end game. That's why we're here. So I want us to remember that God's love and mercy and grace is bigger than any of us can even comprehend. And He has enough love for all of us. So trust His work and trust the Savior's work while you are doing your work. We're actually here on this planet to do this work, and it doesn't look the same for everybody, but to become more like them. You are here to do your work, not your companion's work. You're here to do your work in the best way that you can. And it's going to look different for everybody. So I hope this helps you kind of rethink a little bit what you want your goals to be in 2024. Think about where you actually want to put your work. And it might not look the same as the people around you. And that's totally fine because their work is different than yours. All right, everyone, happiest New Year's to you, and we will talk to you next week. Serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can present a unique set of challenges, and many of those challenges you might not even see coming. So you're going to want a unique set of solutions. It's easier than you think to overcome worry and anxiety, serve the successful mission you've always dreamed of, and navigate your post-mission experience with confidence. That is why I created some amazing free goodies that I'm sharing in my show notes. Maybe you'll want to grab the free training for preparing missionaries, my video course for RMs, or maybe you and I should hop on a free strategy call. If you're ready to take your preparedness to serve or your preparedness to come home to the next level, then go grab one of those freebies. And in the meantime, no matter which part of the mission experience you are involved in, just know that Jenny, the LDS mission coach, is thinking about you every single day.